Jake, I yesterday they did bottling, and then I usually do tastings of different stuff after bottling. And one of the owners at Whiskey Acres had a bottle of Old Fitzgerald that was bottled in 1970, distilled in 62.
How was that?
Easily top 10, possibly top 5.
Yeah.
It was because I knew I had before when I came in, I saw someone was bringing in a bottle of Stag. So I knew, and there was a Blue Note store pick that I know people were talking about, and something else. And Rob just brought me out a Glencairn, and he's like, "What do you think of this?" And I kind of gave him some of my nosing and tasting notes, and it was one of those. Jake thought it was a bad thing because I told Julia, I said it almost finished like water, but it was like the flavor stayed with you, and then it was just as soon as it was down the hatch, you were ready for the next sip. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Back from Stitzel-Weller.
Was it opened?
No, he opened it that day. So the one thing he had to do was he ran it through a light filter because the cork started to disintegrate when he opened it. So it could have changed it a slight, but probably anything too much. But that was fun to drink a really old bottle.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters.
Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jake. New Jake.
Getting used to the new seat.
Yeah. So we've got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is that the bad news is that due to some scheduling conflicts, Roberto's going to be out for a while. But the good news is that Jake Cigelnick from Gold Eagle has decided to join the podcast permanently, which we're really excited about. So welcome.
Very excited.
After about
thank you
8
for having
guest
me.
appearances.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5, but I'm here. I'm here full time now. The fans wanted me to be on here, so I had to listen.
Yeah.
Your following does bring more listens to our podcast. So
That's awesome. That's good.
Yeah, if you thought we talked about Gold Eagle a lot before, just wait.
No, yeah, just wait. Fasten your seatbelts, folks.
Every single barrel pick every week will be pushed on this podcast to its extent.
Yeah, I'm not going to be upset about that. So yeah, we got a couple news articles that we want to bring up that fit our theme this week. And Dan will kind of elaborate on that after I read these.
How much have we advanced that we now have themes to an episode? Like
we
there's
did it
almost
out
like
of necessity, really.
there's almost
Yeah,
like
I feel like you have to have a theme.
there's like a half-assed attempt at organization going on these days.
Yeah, I mean it's a good thing. So the first article from Forbes. American whiskey salvaged from 170-year-old shipwreck could be worth millions. So there's a category of scotch called sunken scotch, which are barrels of scotch saved from shipwrecks. And these go for absurd amounts of money. And they recently found one in a shipwreck. I think it's a couple barrels.
A bunch of barrels, like 270 or something.
Yeah. So they discovered the wreckage of the Westmoreland in 2010, which is 200 feet below the surface in Platte Bay, Michigan. It sank on December in 1854, so it's been down there for a very long time. And it's also one of the best preserved shipwrecks of the 19th century, which is pretty neat. And like Dan said, it's chock full of bourbon, 280 barrels. So in 2001, a single bottle of scotch salvaged from the SS Politician, and that's a bottle, not even like a barrel. It was just a glass
per
bottle in a ship. Sold for 12,925 pounds. So they're estimating that 280 barrels could provide somewhere around 56,000 bottles. Which, if you equate that with that bottle of scotch that sold, it could be worth upwards of $871 million. Which is insane.
So they found the ship with bourbon. We know it's bourbon, or is it whiskey?
Yeah,
Whiskey.
so it's. I thought it was bourbon.
All I remember is it said American whiskey on it. I don't,
because I don't know how you would be able to tell either way.
Yeah.
But
let's see.
It just says barrels worth of whiskey.
Okay, so maybe it's
and
just
it was
whiskey.
1850 or something. I don't even think bourbon was
1854. Yeah, it wouldn't have had its
a
own
thing.
designation back then.
So
right, yeah.
it would have just been American whiskey. But so they found barrels full, and there was no leakage or anything. Or
They don't know if it's full. That was
Yeah.
the best case scenario.
Gotcha.
So the one thing you won't have to worry about will be a lot of evaporation loss, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
When you're surrounded by water, you're not going to have much evaporation. But if the barrel's leaked, then yeah, you're not going to have crap. But obviously, if it's happened before, especially over in Scotland, where they found full barrels in there, so it's definitely possible that a lot of them still have lots of whiskey.
Yeah. So the diver that discovered it, Ross Richardson, I believe is the one that's claiming possession. So he's actually going to partner with Traverse City to have the whiskey like analyzed once they harvest it. And then they should be able to get at least some idea of like the mash bill or maybe grains that were used based on like genetic data from the corn and whatever grains are in there. So that'll be interesting to like keep an eye on and see what was actually in there. 'Cause it could be something really cool, like, you know,
I mean, I
maybe
think
it is a
anything in
bourbon
there
mash
is going to
bill,
be
or-
very cool.
yeah.
Just the fact that we found whiskey from the 1800s, and it was underwater, and it's still intact and maybe still drinkable.
Yeah.
The unique thing that's going to be from this is corn was a lot different in the 1800s. So
Right.
it's going to have a completely different flavor profile to it no matter what, just because it's going to be a very different grain that was used in it.
Yeah.
And the cool factor is insane. I mean, that's if you're paying $13,000 per bottle, you're buying it because it's cool. The question is not if you would buy one or not. Would you drink it if someone gave it to you? Do you think whiskey that's been sitting in a lake for over 200 years is going to be good at all or not?
If I bought
It's a
one,
tough one.
probably not. But if somebody offered me a taste, I would say yes.
I think I'm the same. I would definitely drink it if someone offered it to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have very high expectations for it, though.
Probably not.
I
mean, you got to assume that it may be aged for like a couple years before they put it on the ship, and then it's been sitting there. And like, how much wood penetration is actually happening at the bottom of Lake Michigan? Presumably, like probably
Right.
not that much.
I mean, you're not going to have the climate variations where you're going to get the hot and the heating and the cooling to get it in and out of the barrel.
Right.
But at the same point, it's been touching been touching wood for that.
Yeah.
That sounded bad. It's been for a couple hundred years. So you would think it would pick up some decent amount of flavor just from time,
Yeah,
even without
it could.
But
It might be at the point where it's just like way too much though. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Jake, what's the
Who knows?
oldest whiskey you've had? We've talked about it before. I think in the 18 or 20 years is the oldest I've had. Have you had anything older? I'm sure you've had some older scotches and things.
I know I've had like a 40-year Scotch. I'd have to think hard on this one, on what the oldest ever was, but off the top of my head, I think, 40.
What's the flavor profile like on a 40?
It wasn't as oaky as I would think. being mostly a bourbon drinker lately, you obviously get a lot more oak with older bourbons. And when I say old bourbon, I mean like 15 years, 20 years is an old bourbon. But Scotch, I mean, you can have 60, 70 year old scotches, obviously going to be very expensive and harder to find, but the aging process is a lot slower in Scotland. So I would probably say it wasn't as oaky as I was expecting. But yeah, the amount of depth that's in there, that's what really shined.
So maybe it will taste good. One of us needs to win the lottery.
But that's very old. I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors in play. Like, not only is it that old, but it was underwater the whole time. Just like thinking about it, I just can't see how there's no like saltiness or anything that could have leaked in or out.
It wouldn't have wasn't much saltiness being fresh.
It's freshwater. Yeah.
They say though, I mean, it's northern Michigan, so it's going to be a cooler environment, and that a couple 100 feet deep. Usually, when stuff's in a cool, pressurized environment like that, it preserves pretty well.
Yeah.
And do we know anything about the barrels and how the barrels were made back then?
No.
Or probably
didn't say
were not charred.
I was gonna say something about charred oak when we were talking about it first, but just said
charring
oak.
started in like the early 1900s.
Yeah, it was possibly Elijah Craig is the first one that did that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're all American single malts.
Maybe.
Check out our episode from last week where we talk about American single malts.
Perfect gateway.
Well, all right. So moving on to the next article is like a complete 180. This one's from Maxim, Dan's favorite magazine. Mystic from North Carolina is going to be sending barrels up into space to age.
That's what I was going to ask about if we were going to cover that.
Yeah.
So they're partnering with, I think, SpaceX and a couple other groups to launch these barrels up into space. I don't believe it says how long
a year
it's supposed to be up there. Is
They're
it
going to leave them in low Earth orbit for a year.
Wow. Okay. So they're saying that you have to purchase it as an NFT first for $75,000, and then I'm assuming when it comes back down, you exchange your NFT for the bottle or whatever. It looks like they're only going to do 1,000 bottles at most, depending on what they can like pull out or harvest at the end. But this is the pinnacle of what our topic is tonight, which is gimmick whiskeys.
Can't top that.
So I don't know what this is actually like. The space one's kind of interesting. It actually should be a similar environment to like the shipwreck, because there's not going to be a whole bunch of moisture, so you're not going to get a bunch of evaporation.
No oxygen.
I don't know how much aging benefit you're going to get out of 1 year.
See, that's what I was trying to think about, and I'm a big space nerd, but a lot of my space science is not up to par. But from videos of watching astronauts in space inside the space station and stuff, it seems like water just amasses together and holds its own shape.
Right.
From what I've seen. So I don't know if it's going to get much in and out of a barrel if its natural tendency is to attract to each other instead of other things.
Right.
I just think of
that's a good point.
What was
how much wood contact are you really going to get in the barrel?
What was it, Passengers, the movie, when the gravity thing went away and the pool water just made a big ball? I'm guessing that's what space is like, is that movie Passengers. Chris Pratt wouldn't do a movie where he lied. That's my first thing. It sounds like it's a crazy amount for a bottle, because it is.
Oh, yeah.
But when you look at SpaceX's cost to launch into space, it's a little under $275,000 for 100 pounds. And 100 pounds is just a 53-gallon barrel weight empty.
Mm-hmm.
Full, it's going to be over 500 pounds. I mean, you're talking per barrel a few $1 million just to send it up for a year. So they're
That's probably only the beginning of the costs.
Yeah. And we were talking about it. I was talking about it with some other people of just the cost and that they're spending to send this to space. And it's like the amount of money they're charging for a bottle. We kind of tried to do the rough math, and it didn't seem like they would make that much off of it. But at the same point as how many people are now talking about Mystic Whiskey sending whiskey into space, which is a marketing cost at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So are they sending something up for the sole purpose of holding this whiskey, or is it like being attached onto some kind of mission that's already happening?
They don't say, but the amount of weight, because I think was it 4 or 5 barrels or something they're sending up?
5.
So, I mean, that's a pretty heavy payload already to piggyback on somebody else's, which I guess if someone's shooting, they're just going to be in low Earth orbit. So if someone's shooting up a satellite, a couple small satellites, they could probably piggyback on that and keep the cost lower. But it's still going to be insane.
Yeah. What happens if the rocket blows up?
Yeah.
Alcohol's not flammable, so it'll probably be fine. I will say one thing: the bottle looks really cool that they're going to put it in.
Yeah,
it better if you're paying $75,000.
Yeah,
and they're also giving you a 50 milliliter sample, right?
I believe they were doing something where you could taste it without having to open the bottle yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it would just be.
Oh wow, that is very cool.
Yeah,
I mean they made it look like a spaceship.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it kind of looks like the top of the Falcon Heavy.
Yeah.
Then it kind of flares out near the bottom, just for people just listening.
It almost looks kind of like the Dragon capsule at the bottom.
Yeah.
Which better that they designed it after SpaceX looked versus Jeff Bezos' rocket, because otherwise it'd have a completely different shape to it, which might not be great press.
So Dan, do you want to take us into the world of gimmick whiskeys? Now we've set the stage with those 2 articles.
So there's whiskeys, and some of the stuff out there you'll see it and you're like, I can definitely tell that that's a gimmick, or I don't think that's going to add much difference to the whiskey. But at the same point, I wanted to find a way to define gimmick. So I think the way we're going to do that is anything that's not what you would normally get from a whiskey or normally think of from a whiskey. So the normal whiskey rules: off distill at 160 or less proof, in a barrel at less than 125 proof, usually made with either corn, rye, wheat, malted barley. A mixture of those ingredients are the main 4 grains that you're going to use. It's going to be aged in new Kentucky oak charred barrels. And that's basically anything, and then finished for 2 to 4 to whatever years. So that's what a normal whiskey is. So I think for ease of this, we kind of say anything that doesn't follow all of those rules or deviates from those rules in a step would be something we can consider a gimmick. Sure. And then it's, do some of these things help the industry, hurt the industry? Are they good? Are they bad or not? So when I'm trying to think of gimmicks, and I think some of the first things we think of, and the one I roll my eyes at the most is celebrity endorsements, of how many celebrities are just jumping on the bandwagon with their endorsement or their own style of whiskey or their own brand of whiskey.
Yeah.
Is gimmick because it's something that not a lot of other places have. Some other gimmicks would be unusual grains and mash bills. We talked about this at work, is technically Whiskey Acres, some of their stuff could be considered gimmick because like our blue popcorn falls outside of, most people don't use that as a grain. You're seeing go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to say, I don't know, because I feel like that's more like experimental. And like just working in a liquor store all day, I hear customers talk about certain products and say, oh, that's a gimmick, that's a gimmick. So like I'm kind of going off of like what I've heard people say is a gimmick whiskey, because I guess it's all opinionated, right? Like, there's not really like we can follow something in certain guidelines, but there's no like definitive definition or law on what is a gimmick and what's not. But
yeah, it's the and grains too. I think grains are. We'll talk about some of the good things about this. I think that's one of the better areas. People are experimenting a lot more with grains to stand out a little bit. Using unusual barrels outside of your Kentucky oak, or just not Kentucky
American
oak, American white oak. Different finishing techniques, and the one I'm drinking tonight, we'll talk about one of their finishing techniques.
The best ever.
And those are kind of the big things that I'm thinking of. And then, I mean, some people could say like Taylor putting their bottle in a tube is a gimmick, but that kind of falls in line with, I mean, that's a big Irish and Scotch thing to do. But just things that are outside of the norm. And actually, the first whiskey we ever did on our podcast was a gimmick whiskey, technically. It was American Highway, which is a rolling rick house that follows Brad Paisley around on tour. And they age that way, saying that it goes through all these different climates and things. But it's just a way to stand out. Now,
exactly, it's a way to stand out.
Right. I guess off that, do you guys think gimmicks are good for the industry or bad for the industry? Or what are some of your thoughts on some of the different gimmicks that you think of, and is it helpful or not?
I think it depends on the end product. Like right now I'm drinking Jefferson Ocean. I'll talk a little bit about it in a little bit, but it's honestly not that different from like the regular baseline Jefferson in terms of like how it tastes. So like I don't think it adds anything of value. But like it's easy to say that for the Jefferson because there's actually like a true baseline to compare it to, where like the American Highway, there isn't really a baseline to compare it to. So it's hard to say if that adds anything or not. But like Jake's going to talk about Oak and Eden in a little bit, and like those actually, they're what do they call it? The flavor spires.
Yeah, so it's in bottle finishing. There's like an actual oak stave in the bottle. And for the record, I actually don't believe Oak and Eden is a gimmick whiskey, but that's probably the number one whiskey that I've heard people come into the store and say, "Oh, that's a gimmick. That's a gimmick. That doesn't do anything," which is part of the reason why I want to talk about it. But I do think gimmick whiskeys are great for the industry. They might not be great for people like us who know a little bit more than the average person. But one, it gets people to try new things, and it also introduces people to the whiskey industry that might not have been in it before, because I'm sure Brad Paisley's fans are out there searching for the bourbon, even if they don't want to drink it. They want a bottle to put on their shelf and display, or maybe they do want to drink it while they're tailgating for one of his concerts. So I think it's
they want that bottle right next to their pink cowgirl hat on the shelf.
Yeah. It draws attention, and I think it makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think it's good, especially within the last 5-10 years. There's so much new whiskey that hits the market every year. So to not have something that just falls in line with all the other norms. If you're going to go head to head and compete with Heaven Hill or Buffalo Trace or things like that, you're not going to do it without something unique unless you have the best whiskey that's ever been invented coming out. Some of the experimental stuff that's going on comes out is a way to stand out, and then you're starting to see other people copy some of those things.
Yeah.
And it might have started out as a gimmick, but it's now changing the industry, which is good to have something that's new and exciting on the market. I think it's good for the innovation standpoint. I think mine that I dislike the most is a celebrity endorsement whiskey, because it's some people are truly whiskey advocates that have been in this for a long time, but then you see a lot more of people just
Name names.
No, I'm not going to name names. Because you know what, Jake? We might make it someday. And by golly, if some of these people won't want to come on our podcast because I talk shit in episode 50 or whatever number this is, then I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But I mean, it's at the same point, Jake, it's got to be good for stores though too, because I know you guys get those celebrities to come into the stores that give your store credit at quite a bit, so it helps stores. So I'm not going to say it's bad for a lot of reasons.
No, yeah, I mean, that's another point too. Like it's, like I said, it's turning more people on to the industry and getting people excited about drinking craft whiskey.
I will say though, my favorite celebrity whiskey that I've seen is still the one. I got to get the bottle at Sam's sometime. The Barry Manilow whiskey that's called Barrel Manilow, and it has a tag on it that says Barrel Manilow. I think that's the most creative one I've seen.
Yeah, what is it?
I don't even know what it is, but I just know it has like a collar necklace that says Barrel Manilow on it.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
And you're paying an additional 25 to 50% just to put money in that celebrity's pocket too when you're buying most of these celebrity endorsed products. That's the part that I don't like, is like, that product is not worth what it is on the shelf, but that celebrity needed to get their cut out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's one of my gripes with the Jefferson Ocean is that it's like significantly more expensive than the baseline bourbon. And like I said, I don't see any value in shipping it and around in the ocean at all in the aging process. So I've got Voyage 23 is my bottle. So it says that it left at noon under clear skies in the spring en route to the Panama Canal, leaving from Savannah, Georgia. It went through the Panama Canal, made it all the way to Tahiti.
Oh, so it followed you.
Yeah. No, this one's really old.
You followed it.
But it doesn't say how long it actually spent.
I think they're usually right around 9 months.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like a decent amount of time, but not so long that it's like gonna have like a huge impact on anything. I don't think. So yeah, I mean, of the like gimmicky whiskeys, I think this is the least impressive. Especially because they significantly tack on an adder for having to do it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
you got to pay the
much
fuel costs.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of costs with shipping stuff, especially when you're just driving around. But yeah, that would be a good side by side. Putting that up against the Reserve, which is their 6 to 10 year blend, because the Ocean is, I believe, like an 8 to 10 year. But the Reserve is very good, and that's $30 cheaper on the shelf than the Ocean. Yeah,
and like you can find it anywhere.
Right.
And you can find the Ocean pretty much anywhere too. Mm-hmm. But I think the other aspect of the Ocean is the different voyages that they kind of treat almost like batches. Or like vintages, or whatever. So like if you're like, a Jefferson collector or something, then like maybe add some kind of value for you personally. But yeah, for me, I don't think I'll ever get another one.
No, I think it's like for people that are just getting into bourbon, they like a smooth pour, like Blanton's Lovers. Their upgrade will be to like Jefferson's Ocean, because at 90 proof, it's not really meant for the connoisseur anyway.
Yeah.
And we kind of know better with those types of gimmicks. So
yeah,
they just came out with a Gosling's rum aged at sea. Same company that owns both those brands.
Okay.
And we just got the Gosling's rum, so they're all in on that aged at sea.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think when I think of gimmicks, that was one of the first I thought of. I like just the normal Jefferson, Jefferson Reserve. For $35, I like it. I think it's a really good $35 whiskey or $40 or wherever it's at. But I tried the Ocean at your place, Jake, and I wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah.
It didn't taste. I mean, it had a different. I will say, if I remember correctly, I might have had a couple that night. If I remember it correctly, it had a difference in flavor, but I don't think I was a big fan of it. And then it was more expensive, and I
mean, if you're looking for a upgrade to the regular Jefferson's Reserve, like any one of their barrel finishes are excellent and like definitely worth the extra cost. Where like the Ocean just isn't.
Yeah, I would say that because I love the Twin Oak. I've had the Pritchard Hill finish cask. And I like that.
The rum finish rye is unbelievable. And then there's a cognac finish bourbon, I think, right? Yeah, all of them are excellent. So
They also came out with the Ocean Rye.
yeah, I got a bottle of that too. I haven't opened it.
Did you?
I like the Jefferson Rye. I haven't tried the Ocean Rye, but Jefferson Rye was one of the first ryes that I enjoyed.
Yeah,
before I started really getting into rye.
It's good. The Ocean Rye has a little more going on than the regular Ocean because it is a double oak as well, in their sourcing, so it tastes very different than their bourbon. Has like a little bit of minty vibe going on.
Nice. I can go next. Mine definitely does not have a gimmick at all to it. We've done some Blackened on the podcast before, but Blackened is Metallica's whiskey. This one is the Blackened crossed with Willet, which is I think you can consider some blends and cross. Like there's a lot of people that are crossing different distilleries whiskeys now. I'm seeing that as more and more of an up and coming trend of doing blends throughout multiple distilleries. And this was a collaboration with Willet. Well, I got this bottle down in Florida, and Jake, I think you would be happy with me. Because I'm trying not to be that guy when I go to liquor stores. So I was at a liquor store in Florida, and I was looking around, and the guy asked if I was looking for anything. And I had decided in my head that I was not going to say anything that was heavily allocated. So I just go, I have no idea why. It's like, I was looking for a Blackened Willet. He's like, I think I have one in the back. And he comes out with a Blackened Willet. My thought was I was going to ask him for something a little more unique and see where the conversation led. He's like, I think I got one. So
and
that's how
like you found that like almost a year after it was released, right?
Yeah.
Like, which is pretty incredible because I believe it was a one-time only release. Like,
Yeah, it was.
very limited. So that was
He
actually
must have
a
just
really
been
good find.
holding on to it and probably realized it's not going to be worth much.
No, I think that must have been what it. But yeah, it was fun. It was funny that I just took a random stab in the dark just to get the conversation rolling and got it. But
I'd have been like, well, if you have that in the back, what else do you have in the back?
I was gonna push it. So
Yeah.
and plus I had to bring it back from Florida, and I already had a pretty full suitcase, so it's less bottles the better. Why some people consider Blackened to be a gimmick is that their big thing is not that they had a cross with Willet, but their aging process, they use their black noise finishing technology, which is in the Rick House, they blare Metallica songs to it. And we talked about this when we did Ride the Lightning, and that one they play the live album of Ride the Lightning. You can go on and see what playlist was playing as this was aging. I didn't care. Because I don't think it does too much. They're saying that the Metallica sound waves go in and out of the barrels and help draw the whiskey in and out and change all the flavor. Could sound waves help with barrel penetration? Possibly, but they could have played fucking Weezer and this probably still tastes the exact same. I don't think there's going to be that much difference from one band to the next. But it's part of the thing. I mean, it's a Metallica whiskey, so one, it's a celebrity whiskey. Two, it's also got a black noise technology that they use. At the end of the day, it's good whiskey. It would be fun to try one that wasn't aged in a Rickhouse Blaring Metallica to see if there is any difference, to do a side by side. They don't do that. The Willet Cross is a really good whiskey. I don't like the normal Blacken that much. I really like the Ride of Lightning. And this is a cross with Willet. It's cast strength at 109.6 proof. They don't disclose the age statement of the mash bill or anything.
Pretty sure it was distilled by Willet too, right?
Yeah, it was distilled by Willet and then finished at Sweet Amber Distilling. I should have probably done some more research. Bottled by Willet Distillery. Finished and bottled by Sweet Amber Distilling in
That one,
New York.
that one had a lot of hype around it when it came out, and I think that not because of the Metallica factor, but more so because it was distilled by Willet, and at that time, any of their own whiskeys were very hard to find.
And I can't remember if it was this one or if it was the Ride of Lightning, which was one of the ones that they didn't have for the first without Dave Pickerel's name on it because he had passed, and Rob Dietrich had taken over as their
I think
master.
it was Ride the Lightning, I think.
Yeah, so Rob's got his name on this one, and then I cannot read the other signature, but I'm guessing it's the master from Willet is on here.
Drew?
Possibly, but it looks like an E, but it looks like it's
Drew Colesveen.
No, that's not the last name. No. I'll have to look it up. I should have done research. Like, I put the outline together. I went that far, but I didn't just go all the way. And
Is it Rob Dietrich?
Rob Dietrich's the guy from Blackened.
Yeah.
It's the other guy I'm trying to figure out.
Okay. I'm looking at the playlist that was played for that bottle, and it's pretty fantastic.
It must be good whiskey.
Yeah, it's got to make
I'm a believer in the black sound technology.
black noise. Black noise.
noise.
I think it might be trademarked too. It is trademarked. Yes, give them their due for the trademarking of it. But like I said, the normal Blackened I wasn't a big fan of. But the Ride the Lightning and this cross with Willet was really good. I think they said this is probably it was whiskey as old as 8 years in it, but on average probably 6.5 is what the kind of according to Breaking Bourbon. But
Are we assuming that it's MGP unless it's this one specifically?
Blackened?
Yeah. I don't know if we know where it's sourced from, right?
I don't think I have. I don't have the Ride the Lightning bottle. I've bought 2 bottles of Ride the Lightning, and I don't have any of them because they went to a friend.
Yeah, I don't know 100%, but I would assume so. I mean, it would say on the bottle where it was distilled, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking real quick.
But I mean, it makes it stand out. But at least this is a celebrity whiskey that also has something different besides just celebrity's name on it. Like,
It's Sweet Amber.
yeah, that's out of New York.
New
That's where they
York.
bottled
Yeah.
or finished and bottled out of there.
They do the. Oh, let's see. It says the blending and
And this one
cask
this was
finishing.
finished in Madeira as well. I should have said that. I should. Really
Oh, okay.
This has a Madeira cask finish on it too.
But it looks like their warehouse is in Columbus, where they do the blending and any finishing stuff. So
Nice. But yeah, if you come across a Blackened Willet, there's not many out there. It's a good pickup, but
yeah, it's not too expensive either. It was like 70, 75.
no, it was like I got mine at 120.
Oh, that's pretty high though.
And I think on Breaking Bourbon has the MSRP as 140 in 2021. So
Oh, really?
I'm guessing mine was cheaper because I got it in Florida. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't remember paying that
I also
much
got
for
it in
mine.
Cocoa, Florida, which isn't necessarily the most high-end clientele all the time. Not Cocoa Beach, Cocoa.
All right. Well, Jake, do you want to talk about Oak and Eden?
Definitely. Yeah. All right, so Oak and Eden, distillery out of Texas. There is a floating piece of oak inside the bottle, which is probably why we get so many people that come into the store and say, "Oh, that's a gimmick. That's a gimmick. There's a little piece of wood in there." Yeah, look at Jake's bottle; it's empty. If it depends, I guess, on what definition you're using for gimmick, if this is a gimmick or not. But to the point about the Jefferson's Ocean tasting nearly the same as the Reserve, this is clearly not a gimmick because they're using 4-year MGP bourbon and putting some kind of different oak. They have over 100 different possibilities or combinations that you can do with types of wood, what kind of, they do wood soaked in coffee, wood soaked in Cabernet, all these different types of combinations that you can use. And it's not like they're taking White Dog or unaged bourbon, putting the piece of oak in there. They're taking 4-year-old MGP that's ready to be bottled, could be bottled on its own, and then just using the wood spiral to kind of finish it and give it another touch. And when you taste different Oaken Edens, they taste very, very different from each other. There isn't a single one that tastes similar. So the bottle that I'm sipping right now is Amburana Oak Wood Spiral with 4-year traditional MGP bourbon mash bill. So if you've ever had Amburana Oak, you would probably pick this up just by when you open the bottle or smelling that this is finished in Amburana Oak. It gives off a very cinnamon type of flavor, a lot of like cheesecake, sweetness, apple pie, crumb cake. It's dessert in a glass, and once you pour this bottle or anything finished in Amburana Oak into a glass, you need to put this glass through the dishwasher twice before you use it again. It's that potent. The whole room smells like Amburana. So this particular bottle is a barrel pick that we did with the Adventures Club. It's going to be released on Friday. I've been giving some people blind tastes of it as they come into the bar, and I think I'm like 12 for 13 for people that have tasted and bought a bottle. And it's for sure one that you need to taste before you buy because of how different it is. And you need to go into it with an open mind because I think a lot of bourbon connoisseurs, they see that oak spiral sitting in the bottle and they automatically make up their mind that they don't like it because maybe they think it's a gimmick whiskey. But I don't know, Jake, what do you think? You've been sipping on this for a little bit too.
Yeah, so I mean, we went to an Oaken Eden masterclass at the store. I think it was last summer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like I went in not expecting all that much, but I think I walked away with 5 or 6 bottles because almost everything we tried was excellent.
And they're at the right price too.
Yeah, and they're very affordable in terms of like finished whiskeys. And the coffee finish was unbelievable. I've got your first store pick, which is basically like a double oaked rye, right?
Yeah, with a toasted finish rye.
Yeah, which is excellent as well. I got the rum finished rye and another rye. This one's charred oak, so another like double oaked rye almost. And I was very impressed with what they're doing there. And I was actually at an event last night at Gold Eagle, and Jake poured me this Amburana just to get my opinion on it, and it's pretty incredible. Though, like Jake said, it's all kinds of dessert flavors. Like right now, my whole office smells like snickerdoodle cookies are baking. So, it's excellent. It is very different. So if you're not
Very
into
different.
that like dessert kind of profile, like it might not float your boat, but like it's a very nice shake up, I think, from like the traditional bourbon flavors.
Yeah, and this is that's the Amburana oak mostly coming through, which is it's a Brazilian wood. The trees grow like all kind of crooked, so it's very very hard to make a barrel out of them. But if you're familiar with Starlight Cigar Batch, they're the ones that kind of put Amburana wood on the map. With their cigar batch is just finished just in Amburana barrels. And like I said, it's very distinct, very unique. I was kind of looking up a little bit about Amburana earlier, and it got discovered and came to the U.S. for finishing whiskeys in 2012, so it's fairly new. And yeah, like I said, because the trees grow so crooked, it's very difficult to build a barrel out of them, which is why this approach is a lot more practical to just put a little spiral inside the bottle to finish.
Yeah. And I think one thing with Oak and Eden is like the black noise technology and the ocean technology or ocean finishing stuff. I don't think it does that much. The one thing with those spires is it does change the flavor quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing with Oak and Eden is you can basically customize your own whiskey now. Because you can pick. I think that you can do it on their website, right? Where you can go and I'm not sure if it ships everywhere, but I know you can pick the type of whiskey you want and then the type of spire you want in it and order. And it's becoming very customizable, especially for store picks and things like that, which makes things very unique. Go ahead.
They're putting together like a flagship store outside of Dallas, I think, right? Where like the intent is you can go in, like build your own bottle in the store, and then like walk out with it.
I think
which is
they
pretty
have
cool.
that already, and I think he was.
Is it? Okay.
I think the rep was talking about like they're gonna hopefully build a place like that somewhere in Chicago or Illinois.
That's right. Yeah.
Where you can go and taste. So yeah, so they have they predominantly use MGP. So they have all these different MGP mash bills. You taste through the bourbon at 4 years, pick which one you want. They have wheated, they have bourbon, and then they have rye. And then you pick what kind of oak you want, and then you pick what kind of toast you want or char that you want on the oak, and then you pick the proof. You can do barrel proof, you can do 90 proof. So I think that is super cool to kind of just give people, the everyday person, an opportunity to essentially pick up their own barrel without having to buy an entire barrel.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's places, I know there's distilleries now that have you can go in and make your own gin and take home your small little thing of gin or vodka or things because
Dancing Goat.
Dancing Goat. Because you can do that in a day where you can't make a finished whiskey or a full whiskey in a day. It takes a decent amount of time to get there, which to have a class or being able to go into a store and basically walk out with your own whiskey that no one's going to have that's going to taste anything like it is a unique thing, which is kind of I think that's more of a industry disruptor than anything else. I think the Spire, I like the Spire idea. Like I said, that's one of the few things that we're talking about that actually does make a big difference on the flavor and on the whiskey itself. But I think the cooler thing and the more of what I guess, I don't know if it's really considered a gimmick or not, but the whole you can come in and make your own whiskey is a really cool twist on your normal experience for buying whiskey.
Yeah. On their website, they talk a lot about innovation and ingenuity. So I think it's definitely a successful, like Dan said, disruptor to the industry. It's pretty neat. It does exactly what it's meant to do, which is if it is a gimmick whiskey, it's an extremely successful gimmick. Where some of the others we talked about tonight maybe are not, but yeah, I mean they're making really cool stuff, so yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
It also goes back to if you want to start a whiskey brand and you want to compete with Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill, you can't do that by just distilling bourbon because the amount of time it takes for the bourbon to age and then to adjust and then to age and then to adjust and then to age, by the time you get your perfect bourbon, you're going to be ready to retire. And this is kind of a quick way to build a following, build a brand, and just doing something different. There's so many distilleries out there, and I think nowadays to stand out and survive, you really need to do something different to attract people to your brand.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's only going to get harder, too, because there's so many more distilleries out there now than there were 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
And on top of that, all your big guys are doubling production. So the market's going to be flooded. So now is kind of your last chance to get in with something unique before all their double production starts to hit. Because if you can walk into a store and buy Pappy whenever you want for retail, it's really going to put a hindrance on a lot of the new startups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, it's nice to see new things. You can't hate on people for trying something new or for trying to make their whiskey stand out. Yeah. And, I mean, some of these things, blackened, you're going to get a lot of Metallica fans that'll just drink blackened whiskey because it's Metallica's whiskey. And it's a good whiskey, so it's, yeah. Jeez.
I'm a believer.
I'm trying to make a bad Metallica pun, but I'm not. I'm just not going to do it. I made one on the Ride of Lightning one, so I'm not going to go there for this one. But, well, cool. Definitely something different. You can see what's going on. This kind of gave us a nice little look in to see what other things are going on in the industry, too. I think of all, like I said, of all the things we talked about and all the things you think of when people say the word gimmick, Oak and Eden's got the thing that changes everything the most, where it's not just a look at me, I have a wood spire in a bottle. It does make a massive difference on the flavor of the whiskey. So, but there's other things that do that. I mean, different mash bills. One of the things I'm seeing more and more of, and Jake, you would be able to say this more than I could. Like, I'm seeing a lot more of like malted ryes and other maltings going on and putting in too. Like, it seems to be a new thing that's going rampant right now, is just different types of malts going in.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to distilleries just trying to do something different. And if you already have a good following with your whiskeys and you only have 2 or 3 SKUs, if you release something new with good packaging, cool label, people are going to chase after it and go for it. And a lot of these things that are being released as new additions to distilleries that are already established, they don't have a lot of, because they don't know 10 years ago how this whiskey was going to turn out. So they kind of just distilled the minimal amount and let it age and checked on it here and there. So once it was ready, and if they do decide that it's good enough to release, then without blending and just releasing it on its own, they're not going to have a lot of it. So I think the supply and demand factors in there as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've been seeing are like different strains of grains. Like New Riff has the Balboa rye, which is like a particular strain of rye. I feel like there's a couple others. I mean, like we talked about how
Whiskey
Acres has the like blue popcorn and the Bloody Butcher and
Glass
the one
Gem.
Glass Gem and
I guess the one thing we talked about most, I guess probably the most gimmicky thing we'll have is going to be our own hybrid bourbon, our hybrid corn bourbon, where it's our own corn that we propagated.
well, if it's good,
Yeah, but I think that's cool. I don't know. I would say that's more experimental than gimmicky.
Yeah. There's not going to be a lot of distilleries out there that decide to make their own variety of corn just for their own whiskey. So
Now, question for you, Dan. When you guys are doing these different varietals of corn, are you using the same mash bill, just swapping the corn out?
For the hybrid, we did use their same mash bill. I know we're going to start distilling Glass Gem. I haven't seen the mash bill on that, so I'm not sure if that was just a straight swap out or not.
Because that'd be very cool to like line those up if they are the same mash bills, and just see how just to show people like the corn matters, like going all the way back to what kind of corn you're using makes a big difference.
Yeah, that'll be easy for us to see, because the hybrid corn and our normal yellow dent corn bourbon that we've had for a while are going to be the exact same mash bill. We did play around with a couple different strains of yeast. We did add some bacteria, so we played around a lot with this. Where every week we were adding a different step into the fermentation, just to see what type of flavors we get out of it. And then we did throw a couple in some 25-gallon barrels just to be able to get it to age a little bit quicker to see the difference of it.
Oh, nice.
So we did a lot of experimentation, but more on the fermentation side than the mash bill side.
Yeah, one of the things I've been seeing too is a lot of farm to table or farm to bottle stuff, gaining prominence. Whiskey Acres was probably the first I had heard of, but there's been a few others that are starting to kind of pop up or at least promote themselves as that, which is interesting. I don't necessarily think that's a gimmick. I think that's like, I would call that good quality control, maybe.
Yeah.
But,
It's well, I mean, that's a big thing. That was a big thing when Scotch started too. There's still some big farm to table or farm to finished Scotch, but
you're hitting a whole new a whole new group of people that really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just like want to support a local smaller operation like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jake from Gold Eagle, thank you for becoming a member of the podcast.
I'm honored.
One thing before we get into that, sorry, Jake, I'll stop you before you get to do your plugs. We never talked about, we crossed 1,300 followers on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been a little over a year for us. We've had Instagram, and we've been on a tear lately. We've gone from 1,000 to 1,300 pretty quickly. So Generate has put in a lot of hard work in there. Roberto's helping out there now, too, since he can't be on the podcast as much.
Yeah.
But the following's growing, so we thank everybody for the follows and the likes and the shares.
Yeah.
But Jake from Gold Eagle, what are your Gold Eagle plug time now?
Instagram, Gold Eagle Wine. Facebook, Gold Eagle Spirits. Go to goldeaglewine.com and download our app from the links on the website. You can shop our entire inventory and come pick up in the store. We deliver within 15 miles, and a little leaked secret is we are hoping to start shipping soon. So even if you're from out of state, make sure you give us a follow and keep an eye on when that happens.
And the nice thing with the app, too, is you can get all the store picks on the app. And you guys did have an awesome post the other day talking about, I think it was a picture of like all your different barrel picks that you've done. And talking about how some people are always trying to find these heavily allocated bottles.
That's a new topic. Put that on the calendar.
Yeah.
Single barrels?
Yeah.
Single barrels or like, tater chasers or whatever. Cause it's always mind blowing to me. Like every time we get Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, E.H. Taylor, there's such a demand and a drive for it. And like realistically, there's no reason why that stuff's not going to be collecting dust and sitting on the shelf 10 years from now. It's just being mass produced.
Yeah.
I like your thing too of it's like a master distiller went through, selected these barrels, and then sent it out to the store owners, which you guys have tasted a couple different types of whiskey in your time as a liquor store savant. So it's not just that it passed a master distiller; it then went to someone that knows a lot about whiskey as well and said, "I like this one the most." And you're getting a very, very, very good bottle every time.
Yeah.
Or it's not just us, like even if it's a store that you don't really trust, all those barrels are pre-selected and set aside for a reason, and then that store is picking from those barrels that their master distiller or master taster set aside to be bottled as a single barrel.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's so much more value in single barrels to me than anything blended. But especially something that's in the process of being mass produced and
we did an episode about the Gold Eagle Eagle Rare pick, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And like, it's definitely noticeable the difference between the regular off the shelf Eagle Rare and the store pick in terms of the flavor profile, and it's like I don't necessarily think I have a favorite between the two because they're both very good, but the Gold Eagle pick was just good in like a very different way because the flavor profile was like just different enough that it gave it like a cool edge, you know?
Yeah, I mean the other thing too is Eagle Rare is a single barrel when you buy it off the shelf. It's not a blend.
I didn't know that.
Was it single? I thought it was a 2-barrel blend.
I thought it was single barrel.
I could be wrong. I thought it was a 2-barrel.
Even
I know
if it is,
it's very small. It's a very small.
Even if it is a 2-barrel blend, I mean, you know, those are 2 select barrels that were set aside for a reason.
Yeah.
And I haven't, you know, if you line up 5 different Eagle Rares that you bought from different stores and they're not picks, they're just regular, I guarantee they taste completely different. If you do that with Buffalo Trace, I think that's a different story because they're much bigger blends, and it should taste pretty on the dot every time. But with Eagle Rare, I think that is they're going to be vastly different.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that with Blanton's. There's like
Blanton's
differences.
Yeah,
between bottles.
You can actually find some good bottles of Blanton's, but it's going to take a lot of tasting, and then once you do find one you like, good luck tracking down the rest of that barrel.
Yeah.
Yep. Jake, where can people find us on Instagram, Facebook, and podcast places?
You can find us at Bourbon Matters or Bourbon Matters on Facebook. You can go to our website, bourbonmatterspodcast.com. You can email us at bourbonmatters@gmail.com. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, it was fun going through a few different types of whiskeys that have something out of the ordinary with them. So cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers. I'm leaving for Kentucky at 5 a.m. tomorrow.
Gotta beat the snow. Beat that snow.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Yes, I will.